I just remember thinking, wow, you've done this before in your life where you sabotage yourself to the point of pushing everyone away, and you're doing it again with the person you love the most because you're not willing to like confront your fears.
Hey, welcome to the Get Loved Up podcast. I'm Koya Webb, and today I am here with my good friend Lori Harder, and she is an author. She has her own amazing podcast. She's all about building your community. Lori, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. We've talked for...
We had a podcast before this.
Exactly. We've talked for a long time before this, and I think the main thing that I love about you is that you're just an open book. And I think so many of us need that girlfriend that's just going to tell it like it is, you know? So that's kind of what this podcast is going to be about.
I love that.
Dive into it. And, you know, one of the main things that you were talking about that I was really interested in and what we talk a lot about on the show is spirituality and how what you believe and how you operate now is different from what you experienced when you grew up. So can you dive a little bit into that?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's try to take a long story and shorten it. So I grew up in a more conventional but also restrictive religion where it was very by the book, for lack of a better term. Like it was very, very literal. So growing up, it was a lot of, I knew at a young age that I was meant to do something more or bigger than what I was seeing within my family and within my church. And because of the way that I was raised, it was never nurtured because that wasn't acceptable or what my future was going to be. It was going to be to basically either get married or, whatever that looks like and preach. And just that's what I was going to do. But there kept on being like this calling or this feeling of like, while this isn't bad, it didn't fit. And I think so many people can really understand that feeling because I think a lot of people who might be watching are in that exact moment. So I take a lot of the parallels from the religion that I grew up in and I can apply them to my life now, and I can also see it throughout people's lives. So whether it's, your family that don't share the same beliefs as you, but you're not willing to speak up and say it, or you're not willing to set those boundaries, or you're not willing to have those tough conversations, or it's the job that doesn't fit anymore. Or it's that best friend that no longer you share the same value system or you're not moving in the same direction. Whatever it is, for me, it just so happened to have, the experience early on through understanding that this religion didn't quite feel right for me.
Yeah.
It didn't quite, feel, it wasn't translating as love for me. It was translating more as a fearful feeling. So I had to go and figure that out later in my 20s, but it wasn't without a lot of really tough conversations. It wasn't without, having to potentially leave all of those people I grew up with, and that is what happened, and them not being able to, have a relationship with me anymore and what that looked like. So it was a very long journey from being younger to now. So grateful for it, in so many tough conversations. So my whole goal and purpose now is to show people that it might feel like you're going to lose everything if you change or show who you really are. And yeah, you might lose everything for a while, but you will gain everything that was meant to come to you if you open that up and you are willing to walk that path alone for a while.
Right. So you thought you were going to preach.
Yeah. I was just going to go door to door and preach. Yeah.
Okay. And that's what your parents did. That's what your mother and father did.
Yeah, everyone around me.
And you did it for how long?
Till I was 18, till I moved out.
Wow. From as young as you can remember until you moved out. And how was that experience?
I didn't know any different. It's kind of like when people grow up in an area where it's, maybe something's restricted or, women are suppressed. I think you don't know it until you see something different. And even then, sometimes the beliefs were so ingrained in me that I was choosing to want to do it because I didn't, I thought if you didn't do it, that bad things would happen and you were, it just wasn't a good thing. You were going against God or you were going against what you were supposed to do. So growing up, it just felt like even we didn't celebrate birthdays or holidays or things like that. And so when it would happen in school, it was like I would literally go remove myself and be like, I need to go in a different room for this, because it was so ingrained that I didn't want to be a part of it. But it wasn't in, it was like teenage years that I started to realize, when I got more exposure to other people, or whether it was curiosities or reading different things or hearing different things. And to be honest, a lot of it was through feeling different things. It's when I was a teenager was when I started to really start doing fitness.
Right.
So I was walking. I started lifting weights because I was allowed to do that. Like it didn't involve other people who weren't in the religion. So I was allowed to do things that were like singular, but we couldn't associate with people outside of the religion. So I couldn't do like extracurricular activities that included people who weren't from our church. So I was like, well, I can walk, I can run, I can rollerblade, and I could join a gym. So I started to do everything on my own. So it was a really isolated life, but because a lot of the things that I started doing were fitness-based, because the first time I started moving my body, I was like, wait, I've never felt this way. Like I felt like my anxiety was a little bit less that day. I felt like I was proud of myself when I was done, which was like a rare feeling, because I had never, I usually felt like anxious or tired because we ate a lot of sugar. We ate, my whole family was overweight. So it was very like, I was used to feeling not good as a kid. So fitness was kind of the thing that tapped me into like, wait, this feels different. I feel a connection with something. And I knew it was, in my head, I was translating it to God or spirit or whatever you believe. And I was like, I feel a connection to something when I'm moving my body. Why don't I feel this way when I'm sitting in church necessarily? Sometimes I would, but then a lot of times I wouldn't, because maybe the beliefs of different people, or I felt just different judgment throughout different people. So I learned that I had to go and figure out what that connection was for me outside of that particular group that I was in. And I talk about this really openly because I think that religion can serve a lot of people. That I think that it can be a great structure for a lot of people. But if you are feeling like it's more contraction than expansion, I think that's when you start asking yourself, where do you expand more? And I didn't have this language or wording at all when I was younger, but it was just kind of like, where do I feel less anxious, and where do I feel more free, and where do I feel more love? So I went on a journey of figuring that out, but it wasn't... It was more like a journey of just trying everything in the world and then figuring that out later.
And kind of take us through that, because I know some people have the same journey of like, you kind of like, okay, this is not making me feel 100%.
Yeah.
So you rebel and you go completely the opposite way. And how did that feel?
That was the wake up call for me for sure, because I think that after being held like a spring, I just went crazy, right? I was like, the world is my oyster. Like, I'm going to try everything and do everything. And
this was in college?
I wasn't even in college. I was just, my friends were in college. I was just like working random jobs because I just really had never felt like I was going to do anything or amount to anything. And I had never had that expectation put on me, because I was always just going to like take care of myself and my family and preach. So it was never like, you were never even like pushed to go to college or anything like that.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was just, you were just going to do that. Like that was your purpose. So when I got out, it was like, I didn't really even understand how to take care of myself or my life. I didn't have a structure. I just went crazy. So while it was fun for a little while, it started to be obviously horrible. It was like you would, I was getting so addicted to that high. And then what would come on the other side was that rock bottom or a horrible hangover, starting to destroy your relationships, because that's just what you do when you start, like drinking like crazy or hanging out with the wrong people. And it's like life quickly went downhill. And I had quite a few just crazy wake-up calls within that time. I'm not that person who had one and was like, I'm done. Like, it took me quite a few really eye-opening wake-up calls to be like, this is not working for me anymore. Because of the people I was hanging around, their life was reflecting that life was crappy and this was happening to everyone. So I just assumed like, all right, well, this kind of stuff is what happens. Like, these terrible things happen, or your life keeps on spiraling down. And it wasn't until like I knew that I could not, I started to be able to kind of flash forward and be like, I can't do this like another year. I can't, things are going to be really bad in another year, or I can't do this another 5 years. This is not going to be good. Like, that I started to say, something's got to change. And that's when I started to go back to fitness again. Like, I'd always kind of worked out and had a gym membership even throughout the crazy times, but it was more because you want to look good, right? You're going out or whatever. And then I just started doing what I had done when I was younger. Like, I got to hear that voice again. Like, I have to go back to finding me or feeling connected, because I just felt like that connection with Source was like gone, because I was just so blocking it in every possible way. So started doing fitness stuff again and really got back on that path, but really slow. Like, when people are like, oh, you're doing this and that and so many things have happened, I'm like, oh, honey, this has happened so slow. Like,
and what was that last wake-up call where you're just like, you know what, I gotta change?
For me, there was a lot of like crazy things that happened, but the last wake-up call was just that I was in this apartment with these roommates who had made keys for all of their friends. There were like all of these random people coming in and out of this apartment that used to be this beautiful place, and there was a lot of drugs in my apartment. There was like a bunch of heroin and cocaine was coming in, and I wasn't even doing that at the time. So I had called my dad and I was like, Dad, this is the last thing I want to do, but I need to come home. I'm like, I'm not going to even tell you what's going on, but I need to come home and be able to like work for you if possible, because there's stuff going on here that I don't want to be a part of, and I feel like things are going to like go down here. And he was like, come home. I had 3 months left on that lease, and that was it. It was like, went home at that point, because I just could see, I'm like, this is a sinking ship, and if I stay here, I'm going to be on it. So that was the moment.
And so you went home, and how was that like going back home?
Horrible.
After having all this freedom for like
horrible, because I was still living a double life. Like, my mom still thought that I was in the religion, just like doing it from far away.
Right.
And for 3 years I hadn't gone, and I was living this horrible, like crazy alcohol, hanging out with people doing a lot of drugs, like crazy lifestyle, and avoiding my parents and avoiding that conversation. So when I went home, I went back to pretending, which felt awful, which I'm sure many of us know that, because we're all pretending when we go home, a lot of us. And the goal was, the goal is obviously just to always try to bring more of your authentic self. But the second I went back to that feeling, which is crazy. Like, I went back to like lying to my mom and saying I was doing these things, and basically just back to suppression, like very quiet, didn't share a lot, because I didn't want to disappoint her. I didn't want to make her have to choose.
Because you felt she would choose you.
Well, I felt she would choose me, but also be like so terribly upset, like and hurt, and wouldn't know what to do, because a lot of times when that happens, you are supposed to go and tell the congregation what's going on, because you're helping by sharing that. So.
Right. And so what happened? Do your parents know now? When was that?
They know now.
But did it take a long time for you to be able to say?
Oh my gosh, it took years after that.
Okay.
Yeah, it took years after that.
So how long did you stay home when you went back home after the?
I was only home a few months at that point. So, but I was like sleeping in. I had a younger brother who was 14 years younger than me, and I just remember one day, like, I woke up and it was early, and he still had his glow in the dark, like stars and dinosaurs, and there was like all these Star Wars things, and I was like, how did I get here? Like, how am I back here right now? And it was just like, I have to get myself back together in a totally different way. So.
And how did you pull it back together from there?
Fitness was a huge thing. And also, I think I experienced so much pain from what was going on before that I would use that. Like, I would let myself go back to that feeling of what that felt like. And also, I started using that tool of projecting my future, of if I continue on this path, what does it look like? Like, I would sit in that for a while, and I still use that. Like, if I continue on this path or doing this particular thing that I'm excited about, but maybe isn't like what I know my higher self is calling me to, because I'm afraid of doing that next thing. But if I sit here, what is it going to look like in 5 years? Like, am I going to be happy, or am I going to have regrets? So I used that tool then. I use it now, because I was like, I can't go back there. Like, my life will be, who knows where you'd be.
And so what was because now you're an entrepreneur, did you go after that? Did you go right into like, I want to own my own business, I want to own my own company, or did it take a while for you to figure that out?
No, I had a lot of, I think when people suppress, it can come up in forms of, or it can start showing up in forms of depression and anxiety. So I had a lot of anxiety growing up, which turned into panic attacks. So also, which turned into like panic attacks during social situations, because it came in the form of social anxiety as well. So I told myself that I couldn't do certain things because of it. So even though I wanted to go, do a certain job, I was like, oh, well, I'm not educated enough for that. I'll never be able to do it. I'll never even be able to do that interview. So I would take random jobs, like anything that I knew I could work hard at, but wouldn't ever challenge me in that way. So I was working, like I did makeup for a while. I was a barista for a long time, but I was the best damn barista you've ever seen.
You get all the extra drinks.
Oh, I was so good that I was like, I just know I'm so good. This is ridiculous. When you just hit that spot when you're like, you've got to get out of this job, because you have so much to offer, but you're just staying here because you're so afraid. So I ended up getting married to my husband, who's amazing. And if anybody knows him, he's really bluntly honest. And I'm so grateful for him, because he was just so real with me so many times that I remember throughout our marriage, I was like, I married such a jerk, because he was so honest. He was like, I can't have this conversation with you again, Lori. Like, you have to get out of your own way, because I'd have the poor me conversation. I can't do it. I want this job, but I have anxiety. How am I going to, I don't have the education. They're going to know, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, I can't have this conversation with you anymore. You're the only one in the way. And I was like, you're a horrible person. And then finally I was like, oh my God, he's right.
Right.
Like, he literally had a moment with me where he said, you have to piss or get off the pot. Like, I can't, he's like, if you don't change, like, when I say I can't have this conversation with you again, I mean that you are so challenging right now that I don't know how I can be with you. Like, because I was just, when you don't love yourself, you just pull that person down with you. And I could feel myself pulling. Like, I wanted him to fix it so bad, and I remember that feeling, like, why can't you just fix it or help me, or and he wouldn't. And he wouldn't even give me that time of day around that particular thing, because he had already done that. And it didn't work. So I just remember thinking, wow, you've done this before in your life, where you sabotage yourself to the point of pushing everyone away, and you're doing it again with the person you love the most, because you're not willing to confront your fears. And for me, that was a moment of, wow, this is he's one of the best things that has happened to me, and I'm about to try to take him under, because I can't love me. I'm not loving me and showing up for me. So it was a moment of oh my God, you have to fix this.
Yeah. And so what did that look like? I mean,
it looked like saying yes to things, researching and starting to look for a coach who could help me with fitness. I was like, what am I good at? What is anything that I could move forward? What would be something, again, didn't have this terminology, but basically, essentially, it was what would be a needle moving action that would actually get me out of this particular cycle that I'm in. And I was like, well, you've always done fitness. What's a goal you could set with fitness? And I was like, I could do a fitness competition. And I was like, what does that even look like? So I started researching, is there anyone out there who helps people who want to do a fitness competition, who've never done one before? And I ended up finding someone. It was a magazine advertisement. It wasn't even, we didn't even Google back then. It was just you had to actually research. So I found this woman named Kathy Savage, who had advertised a fitness boot camp for people who wanted to compete. It was tiny advertisement in Oxygen magazine.
Yeah, and I remember Oxygen magazine.
Of course.
On the cover.
Oh my God. And I was just oh my God, this is a woman who does this. I told my husband, I'm like, I have to do this. And I'd never been on a plane by myself ever. And I was like, I'm going to this camp. I don't know anyone. And I committed to it. And once I committed, it was the scariest thing I'd ever done. Like, oh my God, the panic attacks, staying by myself, like renting a car, driving in Boston, taking a flight by myself, like all of these things that I had to confront and be like, you can't go back to not doing something because you're going to lose your relationships. So you're going to keep showing up as this person who doesn't love herself, who drives everyone away. And I could see at that point, like some people can, I had just blamed him so much for not helping me at that point that it was almost like I got to this place of realizing like that's not helping and he's not to blame. And wow, ownership is a really painful, powerful place.
Right. It's one of the deepest places you can go if you really want to work on yourself. And what I love that you said is like, he's not going to help me, so you had to do it yourself. Because I truly believe if you don't love yourself, no one else can do it.
No one.
I mean, they can be an inspiration, they can assist, but at the end of the day, if you're fighting your own self, as you said, you'll drag someone with you, kicking and screaming, but especially if they love you.
Oh my God.
You'll pull them in and pull them under. So when did you really feel it starting to turn around? After trying, were there any specific, once you had this camp, was it just like a switch after that, or did it take a while of some more research and reading and things?
I mean, honestly, it started to turn, it didn't make the anxiety go away, but it started to empower me to know I could turn it around. So it did start to turn around immediately, but it wasn't like a world like shaking shift. But what it does is those small actions build so much confidence that you don't even realize it's doing. It's like, oh, I did that, and I did that on my own, and I can do the next thing. So I think that even just getting on the plane by myself and like all of those things and meeting people and showing up, even though I was in the back of the room, and thankfully even when you show up, things happen for you. So just because I showed up, and even though I was in the back of the room, I just so happened to like make a friend nervously with a girl who like was totally great with introducing everyone to me. So it was kind of like, if you just show up, the next step will also appear. So that kind of happened, and I ended up getting in with this group. So now I had accountability. Now I had like these things that made me feel more like I was able to do it. And you just have to keep making those small decisions and then showing up and trusting that even though you don't actually know what's going to happen. I didn't know what was going to happen when I was there. These girls could have been totally mean to me. And honestly, a Midwest girl going to Boston, I did not know what I was getting into, because they're just like, they say what they need and they get what they want and they just speak their mind. And I was like, wow. So for me, it was like the most perfect environment, actually, because it just rocked my world, realizing that there's this whole world of people out there who are creating their life, and saying what they need, and speaking up, and making friends. And I was like holding each other accountable on their goals. And I thought, the power of getting outside of the circle that you're in and seeing another circle, or seeing what else is possible, or seeing the inside of someone else's business is life-changing, because it shows you that there's another way.
Absolutely. So you saw this other way, and you're like, all right, I can do this, I'm going to do this. And what was your first step into like, okay, I think that I got it. Like, I love myself.
I mean, I still work on that all the time. But I think for me, I think that loving myself was done through questioning what would even someone who loves themselves do. Because sometimes you can say love yourself and people are like, what does that even mean? For me, I think in the beginning for me, in order to love myself, and even still now, I have to make myself proud. So even if that is through like, doing something healthy for my body, doing something healthy for my mind, making sure that I connect with God, making sure that I connect with friends. Like when I make myself proud and I take care of me, I'm like, wow, I like me. Like I'm proud of myself. And also when I am going into a space that feels uncomfortable to express the gifts that I know that I have. That is a huge way to love yourself, because I think that when we use those gifts, we can really actually fall in love with who we are. Like, I think when you're in alignment with your gifts and your purpose, that you get to experience a part of you that's like, I think it's the most like soulful spiritual part that you can possibly experience is when you're using the gifts that you were given to help other people.
Absolutely.
So that's when I like, when I get to speak, when right now, like when I'm experiencing what it feels like to like use maybe some of the struggle and tap into a gift and share it with people who are listening. Like that's why they need to step in, is because they're going to meet a person that they didn't even know existed. They do know exists inside of them, but they haven't seen yet maybe. Like you're going to I surprise myself daily.
That's beautiful.
Oh, that's cool. Did I just say that? That's awesome. Where'd that come from? Probably not me. Great.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. So you found this woman, you found this love for yourself. As you say, you're still working on. And I appreciate your honesty, because I feel the same way. I feel like, especially when you're a giver and you're a nurturer, the main thing you constantly have to work on is loving yourself. Loving yourself first and most, and realizing you're always going to have enough to give to your husband, your community, your children, and whatnot. So what does that look like to you to really do that on a regular basis?
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I think we can either look back in our past as well and see how, like, what our tendencies are. And I can tend to put myself on the back burner and want to be liked, or do things that make me like overextend myself for wanting to be liked, because I didn't have a lot of that when I was younger. So that's my default, is like, or if I feel like someone doesn't like me, I'm like me, how can they like me? What can I give them? Right. What can I do for them? How can I add value to them? And that was a huge, what that did was it actually made me start resenting people, because I was exhausted all the time having these friendships.
Right.
And I was like, wow, friendship doesn't have to be that way. Like, you can just show up and still be worthy of someone's friendship. So what does it look like to love myself on the daily? Sometimes it's as little as noticing when I'm trying to make someone like me. When I'm trying to force an outcome and I'm exhausted, or I'm like really upset with why someone is not like, liking me, or we're not connecting, or we're not friends. So it can be pulling back and telling myself like, hey, if that door's not opening, you don't have to push it. Like, you can just like you. Like, you can just like who you are. And it's like a conversation with myself of, hey, you're still good enough. Like, you're still valued and valuable, even if those people don't. So it starts with a conversation sometimes for me. But a lot of times it'll start with my rituals in the morning of just, you like who you are a lot more when you do this, when you meditate, when you don't look at your phone right away, when you don't compare yourself, when you go for a walk, when you get out in nature, when you pray, when you eat well. So I don't want to not like me. And I don't like me when I'm eating a lot of sugar, or when I'm, like when I have too many cocktails too many nights in a row, when I want to like me. So I'm like, what are the things that make me like me? It's just a conversation all the time that's going on in my head.
Right, because if you don't like you, how can someone else like you?
Exactly. I don't show up as the person that I want. Like, that part of you that's like the very awesome, unique part that people are attracted to can't come through when you're like clogging it, suppressing it, or, doing something that's making you feel tired, exhausted.
And what do you feel like when it comes to, because I know before we were really talking about like these boundaries and saying no. So I kind of want to dive into that a little bit, because when you are a people pleaser, when you are a yes person, you really have to learn and relearn like what boundaries look like for yourself.
Boundaries are like, I feel like I could just do a whole other podcast on boundaries. It's my favorite. It's probably one of my favorite topics because of what comes with boundaries. So boundaries are like a beautiful container for whatever you're nurturing, whether it's self-love, or whether it's a new project, or whether it's a relationship, or whatever that is, something that needs to come through. And the thing about boundaries is they're the hardest to ask for. And also, can you love yourself on the other side of your boundary? Because a lot of times a boundary means it's making someone else not really like you. Right. They don't like that your relationship is changing, or they think you're being rude, or they think that you're pulling away from them, or they think that you're no longer showing up or doing the thing that they want you to be doing because you're not living on their terms anymore. You're creating a boundary. I want to live this way, or I want to create my life this way, or I'm going to need your help with this. Can we, when this happens, can you do this? So boundaries are really, I think boundaries are the beginning of like, if you think you love yourself, start setting some boundaries that you need, and then see like how you start feeling. Because sometimes I'll set a boundary even within beautiful, amazing, we were kind of talking about this, like friendships.
Right.
But because maybe your life is taking a new turn, or you want to invest more in maybe your personal relationship, or maybe you want to have children, maybe you want to create room, like sometimes you have to say no to a lot of really good things. Right. And that's where boundaries can be a whole other level of challenging, is like, wow, creating boundaries around really, really great things.
Right.
And, letting it be okay that you are either missing out or you're saying no to someone you love. And I think that the cure to like the painful part of boundaries is just over conversating, over communication. Right. And I think that when you over communicate, at least at the end of the day, your head can hit the pillow and know that you communicated everything in a loving way as much as you could. And wherever else things don't land the way you want, you just have to make peace with it.
Right. And what does that look like in your relationship? Because I know you've been married for how long?
14 years.
14 years, a long, beautiful time. So, and it started out kind of rocky, right? Because you were just learning to love yourself.
Yeah, both of us.
Both of you. Okay. And can you share how you kind of got through that time and what you do on the regular to make sure you guys are both holding space for each other and yourself?
This is such a good question. In the beginning, sometimes Chris and I literally in the beginning are like, I don't know how we stayed together, but I think that the one thing that we've always done is we have taken walks at a really early phase of our marriage. And I can tell you that creating that space to come together and like even just talk about the craziness and like, talk about how your day was, and by the time 40 minutes goes by of walking, you're bound to like get over whatever you're feeling or move that energy through. So I think creating that space to bring up topics that wouldn't be brought up normally, that would be swept under the rug, that resentment would just build on all of those things, those naturally come up because energy wants to move. So even if you don't think on a walk, you're like, I'm not going to talk about this. Probably 45 minutes in, you're going to feel some open space to start talking about things in a lighter way than you probably would have 45 minutes ago sitting in a chair looking at this person that you can't stand right now.
Right.
So if we went on if there was something between us and you and I went on a 60-minute walk, that something would probably end up coming to the surface and one of us would talk about it, because movement just naturally creates this beautiful space and this beautiful way of saying it.
It releases energy.
Yeah.
And I always like to talk to people about energy and the energetics, whether it's walking or yoga or even just your breath. If you can't do anything, everyone has the breath, right?
Yeah.
Even taking deep breaths and breathing can move negative energy and tense and pent up energy out of the body. And so I love that. And it's funny, so many couples mention that they take walks together or do some type of activity together, and that helps them communicate.
Yeah.
So walks, is there anything else?
I mean, I could write a book just called Walk It Out.
Walk It Out. I mean, that's a good one.
For real, because it has changed.
Walk It Out.
For
and
real.
Just encourage couples walking together.
Because we've done it almost every day of our marriage, and it's, nothing has not been solved on a walk.
14 years of walking it out. That's beautiful.
Like literally nothing has not been solved on a walk. It may not be completely solved, but it starts the questions around how to solve it. And we've definitely been that couple who's been fighting on walks many, 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 many times, like where it's like that heated argument on a walk. But we will, by the end of it, it's like, I don't want to feel this way. You don't want to feel this way. Maybe the walk has to be, not everybody has this time, but once in a while, if you're on a walk where you're working something out, sometimes that walk will be a 3-hour walk. And we're just like, we gotta move this through.
Right.
Yeah. We had some times in our marriage where we actually early on he lost his job. I was only making $6 per 30-minute session at an LA Fitness. We lost our house, we lost our cars, and we were $300,000 in debt early on in our marriage. And that was like a huge foundation of when we started walking. And we were walking possibility into our body instead of walking the story of like loss and what are we going to do and hopelessness. And it was just like, what's possible? Right. We've lost everything, so we might as well start dreaming. It was kind of like, it really started these spots where we just started like, in a perfect world, what would you want to do and be? Where would you start? If this is all we had, where would we start? Well, this is all we have. So where do we start? And that started changing everything for us. It literally changed everything for us. We had no, when you lose everything, you don't really care what other people think because you're already at rock bottom. So we, it was actually when we had started, doing personal training, doing like a one-on-one studio, and started network marketing. And I remember before that I was like, no, network marketing, people are going to think I'm terrible, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I was like, no, we're doing this. So it just changes a lot. Perspective changes a lot.
Right. And you still do network marketing.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that you love to do amongst many things.
Love.
And what do you feel like for people who are like, okay, that's like super cheesy, like I would never do it, but from being that person yourself, like what would you have to say to that person?
I say to them, they're doing it already. They're just not getting paid for it.
Just
they're doing it for free. They're sharing restaurants they love. They're sharing the clothes they love. They're sharing, you know, if you had something that totally changed your life, and let's just say it was a food or a shake, you'd share it with everybody.
Right.
And you should get paid for that. If you're sharing a company. So it's that idea, and like really empowering yourself around the idea that you are helping this company and you're helping people. And I knew I was helping people because it helped me. So it's hard without a transformation. Like if I was to be like, hey Koya, I want you to sell these, you know, hot dogs. Obviously that goes against everything that you feel in your body is true to be right for you and your path. So it has to be right for your path. Like you have to feel it. It has to be something that aligns with you and something that really makes you feel good and you believe makes other people feel good. And then you have to build that belief and like know that it can be a path for somebody else.
That's beautiful.
I think even, you know, people have trouble with network marketing. They have trouble with selling their own products, their own business, their own services, their own coaching, their own podcast. Like we have to proclaim our passions to other people. Like we have to get behind our own passions or no one else will. Just like you have to love yourself and no one else will.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you guys started the network marketing and when did, and I don't know when the first book came or when was the journey, but kind of take me along the journey from network marketing to now like having multiple businesses, multiple masterminds, and multiple spaces that you're helping people build their own communities and lives.
So that was a long journey as well. So it was network marketing. That was, I think we've been with this company now for almost 10 years. So that was a long time ago. And from there I had my own studio, gym. And I realized really quickly, because I started loving the network marketing part of the business and watching what happened I worked mostly with women, what happened to women when you could empower them through money. Like the freedom that you could give to somebody's life and what they were capable of doing and changing their legacy through that. That started to light me up even more than training one-on-one. Still loved fitness. It was still a beautiful foundation. But for me, I was like, whoa, this is lighting me up more. So how do I start? I started transitioning a little bit more into the business side of network marketing. And from there, I was like, wait, nobody can do the fitness thing and no one can do the business thing without the mindset piece, because everyone's getting in their own way. They're like, yeah, but I'm afraid of what this person thinks. Or, yeah, but I'm not the person who can go and ask. And I was like, I wasn't that person either. So how did I do it? I was like, okay, read this book. All right, go to this event. Okay, try Landmark Forum or Tony Robbins or whatever like spoke to you to go and get out of your own way, because it's just always us. Like I'm in my own way right now with other things. So from there, realized I started loving the mindset piece because I was watching that transformation. So I thought, why can't I have a personal development event? And so went from fitness into, oh, I want a big event, like randomly out of the blue. Not randomly, but like I knew it was a calling into my audience. It was probably like, she's having this event. Okay. And I kind of talked to you before this. I was like, how does one fill a 300-person event on a topic that nobody knows them for, right? Like they're like Lori Fitness, not Lori Mindset. And it was a mindset event. And this was like when meditation and stuff wasn't very big in yoga, and I was like inviting in yoga teachers and doing all sorts of different meditations and personal development. And so I was telling you, I went on Facebook every single day and talk about the things that changed my life to fill this event. And I'd go on in my bathrobe with no makeup on, just like super like, hey, I was trying to wait for a time when it would feel good to talk to you guys, and I could never find one. So I decided the time is in the morning.
Yeah,
me.
The morning's the best time.
Yeah, it was like, that was it. And it literally just started this thing of, I think, me showing up authentically and me creating accountability for myself to show up, and then starting this community off of like showing up, authenticity and mindset, and talking about how that affected my life, and this event filled, and it moved on from there. The event later, like 4 years later, I was like, this needs to be a book, because I've watched how the connections at the event wasn't me on stage. It was literally like, yeah, I might have been facilitating and speaking, and while yes, I'll take credit for like speaking and inviting, but I wasn't doing these like crazy transformations that were happening to people. It was happening when I would connect them.
Right.
So I wanted to teach people about, how do we have this connection, not just at an event, and how do we have it all year? Because they'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sad now that I've gone home. It's a week later. I don't get that same feeling. I've never felt that way. How do I create that at home? So I created the book on how do we keep that connection going.
Right. And A Tribe Called Bliss,
yep.
right?
And that's where it started.
That's really beautiful. And what do you think have been some of the biggest takeaways from your book? The biggest kind of feedback you've gotten from other women about your book?
That we're just not supposed to do this alone. Like, that they were wondering why they...
huge message.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Like, they kept hitting a wall. I kept hitting that wall, and I traced back to everything that I've said. It was always when I came across people. Like, it was always when I joined a mastermind. It was when I found that coach. It was when it's when I came across other people and they showed me something new.
Right.
So that's been the biggest takeaway, is that we can't... Yes, we're these amazing, like, picture, like it's all just a bunch of matches walking around, but we need to strike each other to light up. So without that, we're just kind of like, I feel like I'm amazing, but I'm not really sure. I feel this fire, but I don't know where it is yet. And you have to come across other people to open that up.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what do you feel like now that you're into it, you have your book out? We're talking a little bit about masterminds and what it really means to come together and support. And also what it means to support and hold space as a sister, and also with your business and having them be so connected. Like, how do you differentiate? Is there a separation, or is it kind of just all in there together?
I think in the beginning there's like a differentiation for sure, because sometimes you need to like work on your business before you can even work on, like, you can have the friendships, but I think sometimes you can feel such a pull towards like needing to get your purpose and mission out there that sometimes you do need a solo trip just in the very beginning. And when I say solo trip, I actually don't mean solo at all. I mean where you are just strategically focused with sisters or with other people on something that needs to come through. And then what can happen is you can realize like, oh, this is kind of lonely. How could I add the social aspect or the actual soul support along with this as well? Or you can do hand in hand, like say, I really have this big need for my business right now, but I also like can find that my human side or like this connection side really needs to be supported too. For me, it was the journey of business first, and then I realized like, this is really great that I'm connecting with so many people business-wise and in large groups, and I feel so supported now after like 3 years, but holy crap, I am like, my soul is not feeling like as supported or as connected, or God, I just want to like go to the beach and not talk about business at all. I just want to like enjoy life sitting next to another human talking about whatever comes up. So totally lost track of your question, but
no, you were saying it because it's like kind of that balance between talking about the business stuff and just going to the beach and hanging out and enjoying that time. And I feel like you have to make time for both of it. Yeah,
for both.
That's part of the loving of yourself, is knowing when to do the business and knowing when to do the nurturing.
Yeah.
And what would you say? I have this question that I like to ask sometimes. If you could do any other career, what would you do? If you had all the support, all the finances, no fear whatsoever, and you just get like a golden pass.
Oh, there's so you asked the wrong person this question, though.
I just want one thing, the highest thing that you would do.
Honestly, I'm starting a new company right now, and it's a super like female-centric beverage company, and it's because I asked myself that question every day for like 6 months. I was like, what would I want to do if I could do anything. And I was like, this is one thing, because there was like 50 things, right? And I was like, this one's exciting me the most right now. So I'm going to do that, because honestly, you do have all the money. You can raise it. You can figure out how to raise money.
Right.
You can get a mission that is like, you know, so connected to so many other people that they'll get excited too. Like, nothing is off limits. So I think that question is so important, and I love that you ask it. And I think we should actually ask it every day, like 50 times a day.
Yeah.
Like, what would that be? Because it's not off limits.
Right.
It's totally not. There's so many. We live in the most outrageous, amazing time that we need to use it. Don't waste it. Like, do not waste this time.
Right. And what would you have to share with someone if they're struggling, they're in that place, they're like, I don't know, I've been trying, it's not working for me, my classes aren't filling up, my event is not filling up, like everyone else is getting it, I'm not getting it, I don't know what to do.
I think there's a few things that are going on there, because I've been in that place. Why is my event not filling? Why is this mastermind not filling? Why is this whatever? Why aren't my e-courses selling? And for me, there was usually a few things going on. I was not putting all of my energy into it. I was very scattered, so I had too many things going on at once. And I think where there's scattered energy, there's scattered, obviously scattered focus equals scattered results.
Right.
So I think when you feel scattered, your people feel scattered. So for me, it was pulling back and going, what are the things that really mean a lot to me? And getting rid of a lot of good things. Like, I had to get rid of a lot of good things and make a lot of space and stop saying yes to so many things and stop saying yes to so many shiny speaking events, because I was like, I'm too scattered. I'm not giving my focus to really like sharing this event with my whole heart, right? I wasn't doing, like, whenever I forget, I go back to, oh, remember those Facebook days, Lori, when you showed up every day?
Every single day.
And you talked from your soul every day? That's what works. And when I forget, I literally go back to that. I'm like, that worked then, that many years ago, and it would work now. If I just told someone, go on Facebook every day for 6 months to promote that, and you'll be great. Go and teach and pour your heart out and talk from your human side, like talk from your heart. That would work.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Beautiful and great advice. I think that soul connection is something that we all have, and we take it for granted. And we want all the tips and all the tricks and all the, you know, what did you do? And the thing is, the thing that people are doing are the things that work authentically for them. And sometimes you got to go through. But one thing that doesn't change is showing up as yourself.
Yeah.
Like, that's the common denominator amongst the other things that you can kind of pull out of a toolkit and figure out. That's the common denominator that really brings it all together.
Yep.
And so what do you feel like right now, what do you feel like is your most, your strongest attribute?
This is so fun. My strongest attribute is believing in something and bringing people into that vision. And the vision, I believe in the vision because the vision is usually always rooted in believing in other people and seeing them. So for me, it's really like, I think my strongest attribute is like believing in people and believing in myself, even when I don't feel like I do.
It's beautiful.
Because I don't believe I can fail, because failure is like feedback.
Failure is feedback. Yeah. Absolutely. And I always like to say you can't fail unless you stop trying, because you just keep going.
Totally.
Right. And so what would be, like, what are your, you already said fitness is one of your major ways that you practice self-care. What are like maybe 2 more things you're like, I have to do this every single day to maintain my sanity?
Go for a walk. Like,
and that
fitness,
builds relationships.
But walking for like my relationships and just being in nature. So the walking by no means is a fitness walk. It is literally like just go and like meander, like literally whatever that word means to you. Go walk slow, go be in nature.
So by yourself and with your partner, you take walks by yourself as well?
Sometimes, but usually they're with Chris, but they're not super intentional fitness walks. Like they're just like go be in nature together or go be in nature by yourself. And I try to meditate as often as I can. I probably average about 3 times a week, but I'm all about just staying in momentum. So I don't beat myself up when I don't do it, but that's a huge help for me. Like even just in the morning, I take a few deep breaths and I also read. So I really like to read. I like to read the words of someone who is in like a higher vibration when they wrote it. So because we we're going to morph into that. Like you become what you are consuming. So
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Awesome. And last thing, where can everyone find you?
Just LoriHarder.com or at Lori Harder on all socials.
Right. And is there one more thing you like to leave everyone? One last mantra, a quote that you like to live by?
Oh man. I'm just really in the space right now of like accepting and learning to love fear, because I think it's just so here to remind us of exactly where we need to go. So just accepting the opposite of the spot that you feel you want to be in, because without that feeling you don't want to be in, you can't actually have the other. So like really in the place of accepting polarities in life.
I love that. Because one of my mantras is make fear your friend. You know, I love that. Well, until next time, love yourself, love others, love the planet, and thank you, Lori.
Thank you so much. You're
so
an amazing human and host, and I'm just like so grateful for all you do.
Thank you. Thank you. And we're going to throw a little heart at that camera. 1, 2, 3.